we can. So the format tonight is really designed to be a little bit of a opportunity for questions. We've got a couple of slides that Eve will sort of use, but mainly we just want to find out what you want to know. And
well, thanks everyone. I'm really excited to be training and really partnering with Joanne and the Mediation Institute to bring family group conferencing as another option, because it's something that we can see over the past few years has really started to roll out, and quite in particular now. And I think what we're going to see into the future is it's going to be something that's really going to be in many cases of particularly child protection, and also different forms of family mediation. And the other places that it's being used in is places with disability services, youth services, juvenile justice services, age and disability. So there's lots of different ways that family group conferencing can be used, but traditionally it was actually used for and is used for child protection throughout Australia and many other countries around the world. So I'm just wondering who on the call tonight knows anything about family group conferencing at all?
Yes, I do. I've been a little bit a part of that, having worked with child protection, not as a youth worker and working with young people. I've been a part of some of that with Aboriginal families and one thing and another. So yeah.
Great. So you've been involved in a family group conference then?
Just part of one of the facilitators, like, where they have a group of everybody, the school representatives, the workers with them, the family, and, when they have, and they just facilitate, if there's issues, they come into this group facilitation. Yeah, I've been a part of that.
Yeah, great. So it's really good if you've had that, as you know, with anything, if you've had that hands-on practical experience. So that's good. How about you, Deepa and Brad?
No, I have no experience.
No, sorry, Eve. No experience in that area at all.
No apology needed. That's why you're on here, so you can learn all about
Exactly.
it. Okay. First, I'd like to, tell you a little bit about my experience with family group conferencing and my experience in general. Is that I've worked in particular in intensive family preservation services. So some of you might know what that is, especially you, Cynthia. So it's working with high-risk child protection cases and working to either preserve the family, so they're at imminent risk of removal, or either to support a restoration where children are being restored back into the family home. So that's my background. I've worked mostly with Aboriginal communities, and about 7 years ago, I was asked to be part of a pilot program, and that was across New South Wales. So that was going out to Kempsey, Gunnedah, Tamworth, and here in my local region, which is Ballina, Lismore, Byron Bay. So I was trained about 7 years ago and started to roll out with that pilot program. And then I became a private contractor for family group conferencing. And I really, really love the model. And I can see, I've been doing it for 7 years now, so I see lots of really great outcomes. And then I was asked to be a trainer for Uniting Care, who used to do accredited training. So I've been training in it for about 3 or 4 years now as a trainer, and I really love it because I'm really passionate about the model myself, working in intensive family preservation. So being that, I guess at times that mediator between, helping families understand the child protection system and helping child protection workers understand the family situation. So, that was my initial process anyway. And at times I could see how family didn't really get to be part of that process of decision making. So that's where I love family group conferencing, and I'm really happy to be able to pass that on and see many more people in Australia and the world to start using that process, and governments to actually start putting it into their policies and their practices and really use it. It's still got a long way to go until it's used in the absolute best practice way, I think. And that's something that I'll talk about in different webinars and in the trainings as well. That's sort of my background, and I really love it, and I hope that some of you will be in the training so I can share that passion with you.
Thank you, Eve. And yeah, I did want to mention, so we've formed a partnership with Eve to, when I say we, Mediation Institute, to work and develop this this program as a blended delivery sort of training.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Exciting.
So, tonight, I really want to answer any of your questions in relation to what the training might look like, and Joanne is really good with that. She's helping to structure the training. So we'll talk about what the process of family group conferencing is, and especially for you, Brad and Deepa, that don't know much about it, that'll give you a better understanding of it, and then what the training looks like, and also the membership that the Mediation Institute's going to be providing as well, which is something that's really actually lacking in the industry of family group conferencing, because there's not a great support. And when we're a family group conference facilitator, as you know, some of you are obviously mediators or doing family dispute resolution. Unless you pay for that supervision, you don't really have someone to support you in all the new things that are coming up and support you through the different processes. So I think the membership is going to be a really wonderful thing for that. It's something that I've missed over the years for sure. Okay, so let's have a look. Would people like to let us know who you are? And you've already done a little bit of that, but what you'd like to achieve by attending today's meeting.
Hi, can I say I'm Cynthia Brooking, and I live here on the Gold Coast, between Brisbane and the Gold Coast. And with what you're saying, I'm really interested in what you've got to say here. But my number one, first of all, I'm also a mediator, NMAS accredited, and a family dispute resolution practitioner with, about a dozen years working with children, mainly in child protection, like looking after young people, or just I've had like this a lot of work with kids that aren't with their parents, and also with COLD clients, culturally and linguistically diverse, mainly asylum seekers and refugee children, young people. The one thing I was wondering when you were talking about this is who pushes the like with you, it's you're facilitating this, but like often when I've been involved in something like this, it's been the Department of Child Safety that's been the instigator of it, and so they sort of have it's their PC agenda. What's the story with this? Is it the same sort of, is there anyone that has a vested interest that is going to be be controlling of the outcome, sort of thing? Because I've noticed that a lot, whether it be the Justice Department, or whether it be, with the children, or whether it be the Department of Immigration, or whatever it is. Can you explain that a bit better?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. It's a tricky process. First of all, it sounds like you've got some great skills and experience that will fit perfectly with family group conferencing, obviously working with families and within that child protection system, because at the moment, mainly the referrals are through child protection, or they're through foster care agencies. So in some sense, like, you're correct in what you're saying around a vested interest. However, family group conferencing is a little bit different to juvenile justice conferencing or some other things that you might have seen. It always comes down to, just like anything, who's facilitating it, who the caseworkers are, how experienced everybody is, and how experienced the facilitator is and confident they are as well in being very clear. What I talk about in the training is about being really clear that this is a family meeting. So the purpose of this is for families to be able to actually make decisions.
Okay, that's awesome, because that's not normal, is it? Usually in these other ones, they dictate the terms, and depending on who's on, who's the case manager or the team leader or whatever, and their value system, I've seen some disastrous decisions made, and it's quite sad, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely understand what you're saying. And sometimes, you know, I'll get referrals. And this is the great thing about family group conferencing is I'll get a referral and I can look at it, and then the first point of contact is they'll go back to that referrer, which is usually a caseworker, and I'll really unpack it with them and make it really clear that they're not to have too many non-negotiables, and they're not to come up with the solutions or the outcomes that they want to see for this conference. I need to know what the purpose is, and what the child protection issues are. And then some guiding questions are set. The family get to actually answer by themselves without any workers in the room whatsoever. So they actually get a lot of decision-making power back. And that comes from the idea of family group conferencing. The next slide. Really, the idea comes from the New Zealand model that there was a lot of loss of culture, and there was a lot of Maori children going into care. And what they wanted to do, they wanted to utilise kinship care, because they came from the philosophy that families actually know what's best for the children. They're most connected to the children, and they're the best people to make informed decisions for children. So it may not necessarily at times mean that children can return home, that there's definitely boundaries and guidelines around those decisions, but everybody understands those in going into a conference, and they actually, you know, it's really clear. If, again, we do our key preparation work, it's really clear what they can make decisions about. And I try to ensure that caseworkers don't put too many boundaries on that. Otherwise, as facilitators, we can say it's not appropriate for a family group conference because there's no scope for the family to be able to make decisions. So I ask them to rethink about what's the really important child protection issues. And they're the types of conversations and skills and training we would do more in the training, so that you feel confident about what your role would be in family group conferencing and how you would approach that with caseworkers.
Yeah, so we're hoping with more support and with the training, using a blended model, so we can put more resources for people, that they will feel more confident to negotiate with child safety and you know, reduce down the not negotiables to the things that actually will make a difference to the child's safety. The values.
Are they funding it? Does Child Safety fund these family group conferencing? Because often whoever's doing the paying does the same, so to speak.
They do pay. If it's referred by them, there is a set budget and payment and schedule around that. However, you know, that to me, that doesn't mean that they get the final decisions in any way, shape or form. So I really stick true to the model. That's the most important thing, that as facilitators, we stick really true to the model. And as long as we do that, and we always fall back on those guidelines and those boundaries, it's much easier to have those conversations. But I must say, most of the referrals that I do get, they're referred because actually the caseworkers, they want the families to make some decisions. They want them to sort of step up and take some different parts of responsibility and reconnection with the family. So most of the time, it's actually really great referrals, and they're referrals the caseworkers want to work with us and the family as well.
Oh, that's really good. It sounds amazing. Like, yeah.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Yeah.
I love it. So sorry, Brad and Deepa, we've missed you. I went into a lot of detail there. I get a bit excited.
That's okay.
No, it's fine. It's all interesting. I'm just taking it all in. So keep rolling. It's fine.
Do you have any specific questions, Brad, or you've sort of come to find out what is this thing?
Well, yes, I've come. No specific questions. I've come to find out a little bit more in depth. I mean, I've seen it before. I was working when I was in Queensland. I was working in the when I was volunteering at a community legal centre, and on a Friday we would attend court to provide assistance to parents in when the government are making applications to have guardianship of those children. So I have seen the family counselling, but it was something that I didn't touch into. So it's all foreign.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm happy to sit here and listen.
Fair enough. Feel free to come in if something does pop up. And Dina.
Yeah, thanks, Joanne.
Yeah, I just I don't have anything specifically. I just wanted to, as Brad said, sit and watch and learn something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's all new to me. Like, just interested to know, when you're dealing with a young, vulnerable, people. Just wanted to, learn a few things around that area. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I might share my, so I don't really know much about family group conferencing. I've not had any direct exposure, so I'm really interested in learning more about it as well. I'm probably not interested in working in the child protection area, but I'm really interested in the methodology in the context of family dispute resolution, whether I can learn some skills that might help me to do family conferencing style family dispute resolution for families where grandparents and other family members are important to the care of a child or family. Hopefully before child protection gets involved. So that's kind of I'm always already looking at, where else can I use this?
Joanne, it's a good point, because ideally, best practice, this model would be used before child protection get involved, or at the very, very initial stage. What we're seeing, and that's where I said there's a fair way to go with this model yet, for it to be integrated properly. But really, if this model is used as a process before child protection even get involved, and family can actually step in and support before things get to that stage, I mean, that's the ideal situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So the children don't have the trauma of out-of-home care and all of those other things associated. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, excellent. And Ken, have you got any particular questions or?
No particular questions. I'm here to learn all about the process as well, and how it could help with teaching people.
Yep, no worries. Okay, thank you.
And the only questions I would have is, how does one get the work and what does it pay?
Good question.
Good question.
One of the first ways that you can get work in family group conferencing is to apply. It's usually twice a year that Community Services actually releases a tender, and you can put in your application, and if you're chosen because you've done some training and obviously combined with your other work experience, then you can be chosen to be on a panel of providers, and basically they just send you a referral. So they send the work to you, so it's quite nice and easy in that way. You don't have to go out looking for it. And also foster care agencies, you can approach them in your local area and let them know that you do family group conferencing. It's very popular. It's something that you can get quite a lot of referrals for, particularly depending where you are and how many facilitators in your area. But I've had months where they've wanted to give me, 8 referrals a month, which is huge, and it's not something I would recommend for anyone to take on.
No, that'd be a lot, because there's a lot of lead up to the actual conference. I was talking to so 2 of our new members are a husband and wife couple up your way, and she was saying that they sort of get maybe 6 referrals each a month, which is that's New South Wales as well, and my understanding is there's some changes coming through in Queensland that's probably going to bring it into a similar sort of regime to New South Wales.
Yeah. I mean, the referrals are definitely less for facilitators now than what they were. So, people were wanting to give me years ago so many, but there's a whole list now, which is better, because it was definitely too much, because you get really burnt out from, doing all that lead up and preparation.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, Eve.
Yeah.
It's Brad here. You mentioned that 8's too many. So what's a reasonable number to work with a month if you're solely doing family group conferencing? And how many hours included in the preparation time? So how many hours would you put into the prep time, and then how many hours for the actual conference?
Yeah, it's if we're talking about the FACS model here, then it's up to 15 hours. It's usually between 10 to 15 hours of preparation work, depending on the size of the family, depending where they live, and the complexity and how many times you have to go back. So it's quite a different model in that you actually go to the family. They don't come to an office where you do a mediation process. It's a lot more, although it's a facilitated formal meeting, it's actually a lot more informal in a sense as well. So it's really, you know, almost like doing that family support work in a sense as well, the way you go into their home and do home visits. You're not doing any support work, but you actually go into their homes and meet them and meet the children. And so it's a much more informal way in that sense as well. So really, in regards to your question, how many you would do a month, if you were starting out, I would say don't take on any more than 2 in your first couple of months to get used to it. If you wanted to become full-time, then you might take on 4 referrals a month. It really depends on what income you want. So one conference might give you, say, around an average of 2,000. So, you know, if you're doing one conference a week, so 4 a month, that might be enough income for family group conferencing for you.
Okay, no, that's great. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, I think I've really probably spoken so much that you know what family group conferencing is now, but it really is. It's a facilitated meeting. So you are a facilitator, just like you are a mediator in a mediation session, but you're doing it not just with 1 or 2 people, you're doing it with a really large group. Now, when we bring families together, the complexities of that, of course, as you can imagine, it's not just with separated parents. There's separated parents there, but then there's also separated grandparents, and there's many long histories of family complications. They're the types of dynamics that you're dealing with. But I must say, if you do the preparation, and the key to the preparation is if you can meet everybody face to face, and that's why we get given those 15 hours, you can get an extension of more. Because if you do that preparation, when you bring them all together, your job is to explain to them all so they feel like they really understand what's going to happen on the day. And that's the most key, is so when they come in, they've already got enough anxiety. You've worked out some of the complexities. You've worked out with them how to overcome them and how to get everyone in the one room. And then you facilitate that process, which is, you know, usually a 4-hour process on the day. So, and you get 5 hours. Sometimes you use the whole 5 hours. Sometimes it's 3.5. It really depends. We never put a time limit on a family group conference because we want them to be able to spend time making decisions. And in the training I go through, I won't go into all detail of that tonight, and then after that you do a little bit of documentation work after that. And then as a family group conference facilitator, that is really all your role. So you don't continue on going to support the family in any way. It's just like you are now as a mediator.
Okay, so with that amount of time, like, do you give them lots of breaks, or how do they, you know, how do they cope? People that,
yeah, sometimes they're really ready to pack up and go at the end, because it's broken down into 3 stages and a break as well. It actually feels like it moves quite quickly. So the first stage, everyone's really starting to settle in, and that's where everyone can share information, questions get answered, the purpose of the conference, you know, it's really the setting. And this is one of the most powerful things, is that for once in all the complexity that's been going on, especially when they're in the system of child protection, everybody hears at the same time. They can answer questions at the same time. And I think that's the real beauty and power of the first stage of the conference. That usually takes around about an hour. So an hour is not too long. And then we go into a break time, and that's when the beauty of food comes out. And so everyone gets to eat together, including the caseworkers, any support workers that are there, and all the family members. And, you know, they're the times where you see there's been a lot of questions answered. People have a clearer understanding moving forward. So some barriers come down by that point. And the two most feuding family members for the longest period of time are outside having a smoke together, and the other two are in there having some food together. So it's a nice process in that way. And we try not to make it too formal, because then it breaks down some of those really natural processes that come together. So they have a break, and then after that they go into family time. So that's without professionals present. So again, that's however long that takes them, usually around about an hour and a half, can be 2 hours. So again, it's like broken down into those different sections, so they don't just have to sit there for 4 or 5 hours. And then they might grab a cup of tea once they've finished that, and then everyone comes back together, and that's where the plan is really detailed out from the decisions that the family have made. Okay,
so are you there as a facilitator during family time, or?
That's a tricky question, Joanne. It's not the way the model is intended, that the facilitator is there. However, in my experience, often it's important for the facilitator to be there but not contribute in any way. So if you're going to be there, you know, you come in and out, but really it is the family time. So if you're there, you're not there to make any suggestions, just guide and support, really.
Okay, so not as a scribe or anything like that, no, just...
No, so I always keep this very, very family focused. Yeah. So I always say, okay, who in the family is going to be the scribe? It's about them taking that power back. Yeah. So I've had situations where parents, where the children aren't able to return home, they become the scribe, and then when it's time to present the plan to child protection and everyone that's stayed, they get up and they on the whiteboard, they talk about all the plans that they've made. So there's sometimes huge shifts, and it's actually really beautiful to see, because once within the whole system, they feel like they've had a little bit of power back around the decisions around their children. So it's a very nice process.
Gorgeous.
Yes, Brad?
Yep.
I thought I'd better put my hand up. Just getting back to the numbers. What would be a number that you would say it's too many, or have you come across that?
I think I wouldn't go over 8.
Okay.
So if we take one family group conference a week, which would be 4 a month, that's 20 hours.
Oh, do you mean number of conferences or number of people in a room?
Oh, the number of people in the conference.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I haven't gone back that far.
yeah, I thought we'd gone back a bit.
No.
The more the merrier.
And so, okay, so it doesn't matter. You don't sort of put it, not really an official cap, but what's too many to be unmanageable?
No, there is no such thing as too many in family group conferencing. So I've worked with a lady, she had a family group conference and there was over 60 people there.
Wow, that's a big family.
Yes, very big family, so big families on both sides.
Yeah.
So there was more than one facilitator in that case. So there's a co-facilitation model, of course, if that's needed. Probably in general, most of the conferences have around 12 people probably there. That includes family and caseworkers. That's probably the average number. Probably the most I've had is around the number of probably 20. So it's
okay. Yep.
It's not normal that it goes out to masses.
Yeah. Okay then. And with the facility that you use for the conference, is that something that's like you've organised your own facilitation room, or is that at another facility like the courthouse or something like that?
Yeah. So again, we try to have it fairly neutral and not so formal. So I've only ever had one at a courthouse, and that was for safety reasons because there was a police station next door. But usually we try to have it in a really natural community setting. It will be something, again, that we try to, again, give decision-making power back to the family, and this is their conference. So I always discuss with them where they'd like to have it. where they think's the most appropriate. Sometimes they say where they want it. Sometimes they say, I don't mind wherever, you just book something. If you're doing it for fax, you tell them where you want it and they go ahead and book it.
Oh, okay.
So you do all the organising of this family facilitation,
Yes.
and you organise all the people to come there and all that sort of thing too.
Yes, that's correct. So
Okay.
no one has really any put into it at all except for you as a facilitator. So it's almost like it's handed over to you. You organise it all, you speak to everyone, and you bring them all together. So Joanne's put together a nice table here for us. So family group conferencing in Australia in the past 15 years.
Yeah, so I actually got that from the Australian Institute of Family Studies. There's a report there on that early phase. So hopefully Northern Territory has got on the trend since this was done in 2008. But yeah, so
They definitely have, because I've heard of family group conferencing being used in Northern Territory. So
yeah, so 89, so the late 80s, 90s, when it sort of started as a defined thing in New Zealand, by the sound of, according to that study. So it's in the general scheme of things, it's quite a relatively new process, but not that new. Yeah.
But it's probably fairly new in terms of how often the conferences have been done. So in New South Wales, it's only come in around 2000, and I think there was very, very, very few family group conferencing that's been happening, except for probably the past maybe 3-4 years. It's really had traction.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to talk about our training options?
Yeah. So what we've decided to do, so a lot of the training for the family group conferencing at the moment is done purely as workshop training. Would that be the case, do you think, Eve? Is most of the training that's been done workshop?
Yes.
Yeah. So what we want to do is blended delivery, so that we're able to put a bit more sort of content behind for people, and but we can't train family group conferencing online. It's not the same thing. Yeah. So we definitely have to have a workshop. So what we've gone for is a 2-day workshop. So online learning to get the basics and some of the theory around, some of the thoughts around some of the facilitation skills and that sort of thing. So you've got time to think about it. But then there'll be a workshop which will give them an opportunity to kind of have experience a simulation of a conference.
Yeah, and after you do the 2-day workshop, you really walk away feeling like, okay, I could go back in and I know each step. And that, I think that's the real importance of doing the in-person workshop. Yeah.
And then we've introduced a membership category. So previously our members were either family dispute resolution practitioners or nationally accredited mediators, but now we have members who are family group conference facilitators. They're not accredited mediators or FDRs, and we've already got about 10. Counting, so we've opened up a corporate membership because a lot of the facilitators are employed rather than independent like Eve. So we've set up a corporate membership so that the employer gets a little bit of extra cover as well. So what we're planning with the workshops, I personally hate organising workshops, so we're encouraging the opportunity of people, organisations do in-house and to allow guests to attend, so people from other organisations or individuals in their area. So basically the theory, it seems to be important in terms of the tenders and getting onto panels that you have accredited training. And so we'll be offering this as accredited training. The only actual qualification that is specifically written for family group conferencing is a private qualification, which means that only the people that have that are allowed, you know, have it. I have made inquiries and hopefully we can come to some arrangement. But at the moment we'll be issuing a certificate that's family group conference facilitator and with a couple of units. So respond effectively to behaviours of concern is, it covers some of the issues that might come up, and Eve tells me that there's not really the same, well, there's not the same sort of screening or things like that that you have with, that we're used to with mediation and family dispute resolution. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I guess where this is different is that mainly because the referrals come in from community services, they're really, the risk assessments and safety assessments are already being done. It's highlighted by community services what those risks are, what those safety concerns are. So we don't actually go through a safety checklist with family because we really actually want to keep it really family focused. We certainly need to engage and ask the questions of every family member, you know, will they feel safe? The general ones that you do already, but it's in a much more informal way, not a checklist and getting them to make an assessment. It's more through a conversational based process. And then we do, of course, need to put some things into place if we think there is any risks, but it is a little bit more informal. And I think the main reason for that is, well, there's probably two main reasons. One, because they're already being done by the referrer. And the second reason is we want to keep it at a really family level. Yeah.
So it's I guess what we're looking at is that you will be having people in a group that, you know, so there might be intervention orders, there might have been things in the past, there's been stuff, and so we want to make sure that people are really well equipped to manage that, because I imagine people aren't necessarily excluded unless you feel that there's just like they're active ice user and they're, you know, they're in jail or something, they're not going to be there. But is that the case? Like, you've got people that have had experience?
Yeah. We always tell people that they can't come alcohol or drug affected. I mean, certainly when we've got parents there that are using drugs and we know this, often I've had people, and, you know, it comes to a point in the conference where I think, you know, their withdrawals are starting to kick in. So we're dealing with really complex cases where if we were to actually exclude people because of particular habits or behaviours that they had, then we probably wouldn't have many people at the conference.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have those main key players. So we have to find ways to manage it. And of course, if someone came intoxicated, we'd have to manage that. We wouldn't allow them to come in. Yeah. But it's always a really fine line. It's a tricky one. But what I've found in general, I haven't really had any huge major concerns at all. People tend to manage themselves quite well in front of other people because it's quite a large group setting. And what we find in most family group conferences, particularly most of the family group conferences that I do are for Aboriginal people, and there's always someone in the family that sort of takes that role that you don't even need to take that role. So we have to remember that it is sort of a hierarchical family system, and there's always someone that says, look, just be quiet, would you? Or go outside if you're going to, you know, speak like that. So those natural family roles start to kick in these conferences. So it's quite interesting, and other people help you manage these behaviours. But we certainly need to know how to manage them, and we need to know how to address them before we go into conference, and really how to have those conversations with people about how do they think they're going to be able to manage their own behaviours in the conference, and be really clear about these are the guidelines, and I can't have you in the conference, you know, you're telling me that if you see this person, you're going to physically abuse them, so how is that going to work? So we try to come from a really strength-based way of how do you think you're going to be able to not do that so that you can come and make decisions about your children. And it seems to work out quite well.
Yeah, and so that's the kind of the side of things that we want to really make sure that we're giving good base for people, particularly if people are sort of coming in that don't necessarily have that depth of experience working with those sort of families.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's so we as I said, we didn't have a huge presentation prepared. We just wanted to be able to talk to you about this. So any questions about any of that?
Yeah.
No? Cool.
No, sounds good so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds great. You covered all that when you talked about the family violence, you know, if there's something happening when they take the hierarchical order, that's good.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's going to be an auntie or an uncle or someone who's going to be, yeah, do the head knocking together for you probably.
And look, you've also, you know, usually if it's child protection case, you've got the caseworker and the case manager there as well. You know, everyone's got their mobile phone, so there's always some form of safety precautions in there.
Yeah.
Alone, you're certainly alone when you go through the individual preparation, and these are probably the most safety planning that you need to do is about protecting yourself and keeping yourself safe. You know, making the right decisions about who you meet and where you meet, and they're the types of things that we'll talk about in the training as well.
Yeah. Do you want to maybe just click down the shared screen and yeah, if people want to come back, you can put your faces back. They got you popping in and out. Deepa, have you got any comments?
No.
No? What I've had quite a few of my FDR clients have been Indian and their parents have been really important in decision making. Overly.
Oh, yeah.
Have you had any experience working with those sort of families at all, Eve? Or?
Well, I think that can be very common in many situations, not just in Indian families, but yeah, certainly I've had lots of those situations. And again, it's about the key preparation work. So that's why if we don't meet all of these family members one-on-one, we really don't truly understand the complexities and the dynamics and how we're going to manage these things.
Yeah.
You don't want to work out on the day how you're going to manage these things.
Yeah.
So
you have a plan ahead.
You do. And you have to, so this is not just about managing through people in conflict. This is about managing a whole group of people and different techniques around that. So if you've got someone that tends to be a decision maker, then you need to find ways to manage that. But at the same time, we have to remember that these are families and there is particular systems within families that are always going to be there even when we walk away. And that's what this model really highlights is how's it going to work for the family? But how do we ensure that somebody has got, you know, they're not overpowered in the conference as well? And usually what we do if we realize that that's the situation, we make sure that that person has a support person or an advocate, or maybe it's their best friend that comes along that's really supportive of that. So we try and balance that out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, look, it sounds fascinating. I'm excited about everything. And I would think that you'd be sort of having cross-pollination of skills between that and if you were doing standard mediation or
absolutely
other facilitation as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And that's why, you know, when I did FDR, because I'd done this, you know, it made it easier for me, and it's vice versa. So if you've got mediation skills and you're used to managing conflict and getting people to come to agreements, although we don't really have to make people come to agreements. No. We let them go for it.
Yeah, I was thinking it'd be more in terms of that negotiation during the preparation phase and to be able to ask people, you know, about things, you know, how do you think you're going to cope with that you
All
know,
those skills.
yeah, asking open questions and not necessarily trying to steer them down a path, actually wanting to know. It's cool. No, excellent. Well, that's, does anyone else have any other questions or comments? Or if not, we'll probably call it a night.
Just one
Very, very
question.
educational. Thank you.
Just one question there. When you're talking about the negotiation, do you use, in that preparation stage, you don't give any suggestions in that preparation stage either, do you?
No,
That's good.
not
Okay.
at all. That's something that I'll be definitely talking about in the training. That's,
Okay. Yep.
so good point. It's a key thing that we don't do in family group conferencing, because we want them to think about the outcomes that they want and how that best fits with their family and how it would actually work.
Okay. Thank you. I just wondered about that when you brought that up.
Yeah.
Good point.
So we kind of need a bit of what not to do in there, don't we?
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's so exciting. It's really good. Very positive.
Great. Yeah, I love it. And I think most people that do it love it. The feedback that we get from families is incredible. I don't think I've ever had a feedback sheet that wasn't really positive and that somebody didn't say that they wouldn't refer to family group conferencing. So most people walk away feeling really relieved that everyone's come together and made some decisions. It's most of the time it's what they've been waiting for the past 2 years, 3 years, 6 months, 5 years. So it's a really positive process. It can be, of course, just like any mediation, quite heavy while you're in the process because you're managing it. But when you finish, you think, wow, that was a great outcome, and you feel really positive about it.
Yeah, I can imagine. No, that's wonderful.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eve. That was good.
Thanks, Brad.
Awesome.
Very informative.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, well, I suppose we'll call it a night. It's
Yeah, good night, and thank you again, Eve. That was great.
Yes. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night, all.
good night.
And thanks again, Eve. See you, Joanne. See you,
Bye.
Deepa.
See ya.